What's happening, people? Welcome to my F1 channel. Welcome to Peter on Pole. My name is Peter, in pole position. In the lead up to Drive to Survive Season 3, I've been going through every single season, every single episode. Right now, we're in Season 2, Episode 4. It's all about Mercedes. The episode is titled Dark Days. Now, as the episode began, I expected to basically find out about Niki Lauda, of course, the late, great Niki Lauda, who passed away in 2019 during the season. And so when I saw Dark Days, you saw the sort of montage clips of people wearing the Niki Lauda hat. You had people, obviously, images of Niki Lauda, him being world champion, him escaping through so much in life. You know, this is a man who was, you know, almost burned alive, but, you know, received some substantial burns whilst being a Formula One driver when he crashed and the car exploded on fire. Came back resilient as ever and became world champion again. And he's just he's a phenomenal character in Formula One. He's a phenomenal icon. There's nothing really you can say. There's not enough words to describe the kind of man Niki Lauda was. And so you can see that the shift of this series was going on to more, again, it was more of an emotional one, but, you know, slightly more tragic, if you will. Well, not slightly more, it's pretty harsh. It's not really fair because of what happened with Jules Bianchi, but more so just the fact that, you know, whenever somebody dies, regardless of what the illness is or whatever the circumstance may be, it's always a tragic scenario. So, you know, I thought of that and I thought they were going to sort of relay, this wasn't going to be too much about competition, it was going to be more so about profile and character. So that's what I expected from the title. The main characters, you would say, of course, Niki Lauda being the obvious one, Toto Wolff and Lewis Hamilton as well. It was good to see and get an image of those two and hear them out, hear how they, you know, what they feel about the season, about the, you know, what they had to say really in the episode. So I looked forward to seeing that. There's something about Toto Wolff I really like, and you know, I was excited to sort of hear him speak and see what he had to say. The sort of direction that Netflix went with here, you know, other team members, other staff members were sort of talking about how dominant Mercedes are and how much of a great team they are. And it was a bit, you know, you sort of felt like we were moving into this one place. If you were new to Formula One, if you're new to the series, all you would think about is, okay, Mercedes is the big team. It's the one that's winning all the titles. It's had a phenomenal career so far. The last couple of years, if not like the last 4 or 5 years, have been fantastic for them. They've had 2 driver champions, and then one of them being Lewis Hamilton, the other one being Nico Rosberg. But it's been nothing but constant success. The constructors' titles have been really, you know, they've been sort of decorated with it. So, you know, we were moving into that direction. And, you know, even other teams were just like, look, I mean, look at the size of the team. There are so many members of staff. I think it's something like 1,600. And you know, so it's quite a lot. I think Haas, remember in the Haas episode, I think they said about 280 or something like that. So yeah, it's just it was just a phenomenal. Everyone just sort of speaking and overwhelmingly about how great and how big of a team Mercedes actually are. Whilst that's happening, of course, Toto Wolff brings it down a notch. You know, he talks about the history of Mercedes, how when it began, when its inception, I think it was around 2010. You know, when it began, sort of, it was struggling to win races. It was struggling to finish races. The car was unreliable. They got clips of like Michael Schumacher and Nico Rosberg in the earlier days of Mercedes. And then, you know, the first couple of years, it was really a struggle. Toto speaks about bringing in Niki Lauda, somebody who can be like an advisor, an executive director, if you will, or some sort of vice kind of president, somebody who can influence the team in the right direction and steer it in the right place. So that was the whole point of recruiting Niki Lauda. So he joins in 2012, Niki Lauda, and they portray him as the man, the real strong influence behind Mercedes' success to this day. And, you know, he's a pivotal piece of the jigsaw, if you will, that kind of steers Mercedes into the most dominant team in Formula One. And he's the one that also influenced Lewis Hamilton to join Mercedes, to leave McLaren and join Mercedes. So you imagine Niki Lauda joined in 2012, and then Lewis Hamilton joins the team in 2013. So it's not long before you can see the fingerprints of Niki Lauda here. Of course, we talk about his death. We get to the Monaco Grand Prix, we talk about his death. And the question there is, how will this affect Mercedes? How will Niki Lauda's death affect Mercedes? Straight away, you notice at the Monaco Grand Prix, obviously with the announcement of Niki Lauda's death, the impact it has on the whole paddock, never mind just Mercedes. everybody, to a man, to a woman. It was a sombering moment. Everybody thinking about his influence, thinking about what kind of a influence he had on the sport, how incredible of a man he is, and what a tragic and great loss it is to Formula One. What did I like about this episode? Well, you get moments where Günther Steiner and Toto Wolff, yes, Günther is back in again, yeah. But there are moments where, him and Toto have a bit of banter. They're speaking in German, they're going back and forth in German and English. And they're just having a bit of banter, and it's just good to see that side of both Toto and Günther, just a bit of banter. There's something about it that I did like. It was before a press conference. I think they were trying to sort out their earpieces and mics, and even just like before they even walk into the press conference room, there's a bit of back and forth going on between the two. So it was actually quite hilarious banter, to be fair. I love the livery. So basically, Mercedes went to the German Grand Prix. It was their home Grand Prix. They were celebrating, I think, 200 Grand Prix. It was 125th anniversary. There was all kinds of celebration going on. Toto Wolff mentions in the press conference that Mercedes are going to come with a new livery and also wear a new team kit as well. So that kind of excited me a little bit. And when I saw it, I thought, yeah, look at this. This is phenomenal. This looked amazing. It was that kind of off-white, if you will. That it makes such subtle differences. From silver to white might not look that major, but it was quite a lovely tone. I think that's why I love like the AlphaTauri cars of the last two seasons, because of the fact that kind of white, or the off-white, if you will, almost like cream or whatever, it just looks amazing on a Formula One car. The openness from the drivers, as well as Toto, was one thing I really did appreciate. In Germany, in qualifying, you had Lewis Hamilton, who was not feeling too well. He was kind of sick and was sort of struggling to get on with the qualifying session, and he does well in the end. He gets the car through the race, through the qualifying session. But there's a lot of talk, like even Valtteri Bottas. There's moments where Valtteri Bottas has a moment in the episode as well, and he talks about like, it really hurts when Lewis beats me. It hurts in that friendly competition sense. It's not necessarily like I hate him. He just says, it's one of the best things in the world. It's one of the worst things in the world because he's the fastest driver on the circuit, which he just openly admits. But even like, with Toto, he talks about how sad he is about the loss of Niki Lauda. He talks about, he just remembers the little things, like when they're in the car together, he remembers what kind of AC he wants. He knows where the radio should be, and just little things like that. And he just, they would go for a meal, but now he won't be having that meal with him anymore. And it's just like, it brought up the emotions. It made you feel really sad and very, very sorry for somebody like Toto, because it seemed like Toto and Niki were probably the closest two people that Niki was probably closest to from Formula One. Disaster strikes for Mercedes in the German Grand Prix, their home Grand Prix. Lewis Hamilton, having an absolute maze, spun the car, he's lost the front wing, he's made a few mistakes. Valtteri Bottas as well goes out and absolutely totals the car. He's had to retire. It's a horrible day for Mercedes. They don't even get in the points. One car doesn't finish, the other one finishes 11th. And it's dark days. The title comes up again, and it's just like, oh my goodness, it's always more than just what we think it is. Niki Lauda is a dark day enough. But of course, in the race, the home race, where everything was done, they presented themselves in the new kit and everything else. Some might have found that arrogant. Some might have felt like, look at these lot trying to do this. But it happens anyway, and Lewis Hamilton is so disappointed in himself. Like in the end, when I was talking about the openness of Lewis Hamilton, even like when they go back and do the debrief, he goes back, he just watches his mistake over and over and over, and then he's so gutted. Now, he could be forgiven for something like this because this is a man who's winning races left, right, and centre. He's winning championships left, right, and centre. But even the one time he makes a mistake, even the one time when he costs the team, he takes that beating hard. He takes it upon himself and takes full responsibility of himself. And then you sort of get off camera in a weird way, like they're sort of quite distant. The cameraman's probably very, very distant, or camera woman is very distant from the conversation. But Toto and Lewis Hamilton are speaking to each other. And Toto's just trying to console him, saying, look, we all make mistakes. Like, it's okay. Like, it wasn't just you that made the mistake. We all did as a team. Like, you ain't got to worry about it. Don't kick yourself too hard about it. And, it was that kind of thing. And then it kind of flickers back as well. Like, the whole way Netflix like to do their montages. They did a bit of that. And it went back into Niki Lauda's quotes where he says, everybody makes mistakes, but it's about how you bounce back from them. And, it was all that kind of spiel. And yeah, it just felt like I never knew Lewis would be this mad about a mistake, especially when he wins as often as he does. But he wants it to be perfect, you know? He's somebody who, even when he was really, really sick, he was really, really ill on Saturday at qualifying, he still got the car P1. And, you know, there was just a bit of, it was incredible. It was just incredible how I sort of saw the mentality of this man and I thought, you know what? Like, I'd assume that from Toto Wolff for some reason. I feel like Toto Wolff is somebody who, it has to be perfect. Now, don't get me wrong, when the mistakes happened in the German Grand Prix, he was smacking the table, he was furious, he was fuming, as any human being would be, right? So he just sort of, the emotion flared up, but I think he had enough time to sit down, think about it, gather his thoughts, let the dust settle, speak to Lewis, say, look, mate, don't worry about it. We all make mistakes. It wasn't even just you. We made mistakes our end as well. But we jump on, we go for it. And it's not like, you know, Mercedes were in that much trouble that season. You know, they were okay. But yeah, it was just one of those. It was a very, very strange day. It was a very horrible day for them. But that's what I liked, was just the openness, the way that each of them spoke openly. Bottas on one hand, Lewis Hamilton in this hand, and also Toto Wolff. What surprised me, there was one thing that truly did surprise me in this episode. The episode ends in defeat. Normally you get like episodes where maybe something, there's always triumph at the end. Like, it was a lot of struggle at the beginning. You had the death of Niki Lauda. They did win the Monaco Grand Prix, don't get me wrong, but they struggled to win the Monaco Grand Prix. And I remember Lewis Hamilton referring to Niki at the end, as well as Toto Wolff coming on the team radio saying, look, this is one that this is worthy of like Niki's praise, or this is worthy of a Niki sort of win, if that makes sense. And it was very emotional for the team. You know, they won the Monaco Grand Prix, so you have that triumph there for sure. And then they go to Germany, and you know, it starts off like sunny day with the new livery, the new kit. Lewis gets ill, so it doesn't quite go to plan. He still gets on P1. He starts the race, and it's a catastrophe for Mercedes in that race. And it's one of those, like, Formula One is not fiction. It's not something you can just try and piece together and make a magical fairy tale. Sometimes it can happen, sometimes it doesn't, and that's just sport for you in general. But I was very surprised at just how it ends. I was sort of waiting to, like, okay, they win a race somewhere else and it ends on happy days. No, it does not. It's not a triumph for Mercedes, who are known for triumphing almost every weekend. So that surprised me, pleasantly surprised me in a way, because it was like, okay, you know, it kind of just shows you the realness of the sport. And at the same time, it was one of those where you can't make this stuff up. You can't write the script. So whatever you get given is what you get. So it was a pleasant surprise for me. I liked that. Yeah, we move on to the next episode. Before we close, just a couple of things that I noticed from this episode. The episode starts with Niki and it ends with Niki. This is a tribute, a salute to Niki Lauda. How much of an impact he's made in Formula One. How much of a great icon, legend he is of the sport. And I think Netflix touched that beautifully. And I think it was right to do that. You know, they sort of bookended it with Niki either side. And, you know, that is something that at the end of the day, you know, you take yourself away a bit and you sort of remember and realize, look, this is real life. Leads me to the second point, that you realize how normal these humans are. You know, they're just normal human beings. Doesn't matter if you're Formula One world champion, if you're a team principal, if you're an F1 driver, if you're a mechanic in Formula One, you know, all these titles, all these things, like, anybody would love to be in Formula One for any sort of reason, right? But you do remember that these are just human beings. They're just a bunch of blokes and a bunch of women that are in this sport, with the same emotions as you, the same, you know, skin and bones, you know, they all bleed and everything. Yeah, it was one of those, it takes me back, and I'm somebody who needs to, in general, I need to learn how to not put people on pedestals, not to put things in pedestals. And it's quite difficult when it's regarding famous people, but you almost have to always remind yourself, like, yeah, man, that could be you. Like, you could be on the next season of Drive to Survive. You could be on season 4. And, you know, you realize, yeah, you're just as human as the next person. So that was quite, it was a good reminder. And it was something that I did notice about the episode that I did enjoy. Of course, weather can really mess up a Formula One weekend. I mean, just when you think you're one of the baddest on the grid, you could end up being the worst. No skill, you know, nobody can attain, there's not enough exams to pass in order for you to master every single weather condition. It's impossible. And as it showed in the race, you know, Max Verstappen goes ahead and wins the German Grand Prix, Red Bull winning in Germany, which is like, you know, at least it's you know, to stick it right to Mercedes, who obviously are the rivals. But it was the way that, you know, Christian Horner sort of leans out of the pit lane and he sort of sees the weather and he thinks, oh, something could be on here. And just like that, not because he's necessarily great or Max is great, but just the fact that it's not plain sailing for Mercedes or Ferrari or whoever. And so it throws a spanner in the works, if you will, that, you know, it's the cat amongst the pigeons. Anything can go on. Anything can go on. And I just remember, you know, rain really does. That's why we love to have rain in Formula One races, because we get a more roulette of what kind of winner we might get on the weekend. Finally, it really is a team sport. I mean, when you look at the amount of people involved, because like we were saying about the Lewis situation and Bottas and them not finishing the race, Bottas not finishing and Lewis finishing outside the points, it was more than just the Lewis Hamilton mistake. It was, I think there was issues with the pit crew, there was issues with the engineer. Team briefing at the end, Lewis and Bottas, they had that moment to explain how the car feels, what they felt was good and bad about the car. And you've got tons of people in there saying, well, we've turned down this, we've opened up the downforce or whatever else, you know, all these technical, mechanical words that they use. And it really does go to show, like, you know, everybody has a part to play. Toto, in a little segment there, when he shows the Mercedes sort of area, the sort of office at the time in terms of when they're at the race, he shows, you know, he said something about 1,600 people work here, and every single one of them, like, has an important role to play. If one of them messes up, it messes up the weekend. And in a situation where it can be anything, I think, you know, they were in the pit lane at Mercedes. They were in the pit lane, I forgot to mention, in the German Grand Prix, they were in there for about a minute. Now, pit stops usually take about 2 to 3 seconds, right? In terms of, you know, the car lands, bang, tires on, off you go, see you later. That can be done in like 2 to 3 seconds. It's phenomenally fast. Mercedes was sat in that pit lane for about 55 to 57 seconds, which is just, the race was gone. The race absolutely died. And because of a string of things went wrong, because obviously the strategist, the technical team, the engineer, the mechanics, the pit crew who are having to put the tires on, the front wing had to be changed. There were so many things where, you know, and that front wing has to be like as good as the original front wing, because Lewis broke that in the crash in the German Grand Prix. And it's just little things like that where you just remember, man, it really does require a team effort. As much as it is the driver who goes and puts on the performance. But just like in any sport, there's training Monday to Friday, for example, for the big show on the weekend. There's so many things and so many little things that need to be in place and in line for the weekend. And so, yeah, I was just reminded, and it's something that I noticed again, and it kind of brings it to perspective, if you will. Overall, I'll give the episode 8 out of 10. I thought it was really, really good. I love to see the fact that, you know, we've got something fresh, something new. Mercedes are now into the picture, which we haven't had in Drive to Survive for some time throughout its inception. But now we got a bit of them, and we got the human side to them. It wasn't just about triumph. In fact, it was nothing but disaster. From minute one and up until the end, there was just pure chaos throughout the entire episode. And so I am pleased about the episode because it was something different, it was something new. And I think Netflix were very, very aware of having to be different each episode, or having to have a new direction for each episode, which I thoroughly rated and I enjoyed. That concludes this episode, episode 4, Dark Days. Mercedes did not have the greatest of times. It was a bad episode for them, and it was a very sombering episode as well. If you like the video, please like the video. If you're liking this kind of content, please subscribe to the channel. We're moving on to episode 5, season 2. We're at the halfway stage of season 2. Not many episodes to go left, and then we'll be diving into season 3 as soon as it enters, which is meant to be March 19th, 2021 for the 2020 season, which was more than chaotic. I cannot wait. I'm probably going to try and binge it all in one and try and record it all in one. We'll see how it goes. I don't know. But comment below on what you thought about the episode. Do you think Mercedes have grown since Niki Lauda's passing? What do you think of the state of Mercedes at the moment? With that said, peeps, lights out.